one of the more interesting things that I remember is that there had been a scandal in San Diego, and it left the city council and the mayor somewhat tainted. No one was convicted, but nonetheless, they were obviously tainted and injured by a scandal. And it seemed pretty certain that someone else was going to be mayor. Well, at the time, I suggested to Claire that he ought to run, that he was the favorite, the popular man, respected, that he'd be a shoo-in. And he said, no, I don't think so. He said, I think you ought to run. I said, well, if you don't run, I will. But you ought to, because everybody knows you, everybody respects you, everybody likes you. He said, you know, I really think it's better for you. I think that he said, my goal is Congress. And he said, I think really you would just be perfect. Maybe it's a case of the town and the candidate coming together at the same point, the same time, with mutual need. Anyway, it was not the first time that I had seen generosity on his part.
Congressmen are always happy to push local products, and one of our proudest, of course, was when the Cubic Corporation of San Diego was selected to put in this revolutionary ticket service for the new Washington subway. And Claire and I were asked to go down and pose buying tickets. And of course, Claire was quick to point out that at one occasion in which congressmen paid their own way.
It was always a joy seeing Claire in Washington. He had that wonderful air about him, of friendship, and I could count on him in a very loyal way. He always stepped up to the plate. We differ on some things, of course, who doesn't? But my memory of Claire in Washington was one of a good person, a friend, and a committed leader.
When I did become governor, I did ask him to become chairman of the Republican Party. And that's a rather thankless type task. No one really enjoys that particularly, but he was willing to do it for me because we needed to have an effective party organization in the state. And I knew that he was the right person for the job because of his temperament, his great wit, the fact that he's able to get along so well with everyone.
That's a zoo to be chairman of the party in California, believe me. It was worse than Texas. And yet he somehow managed to keep people together through his leadership and his skills.
And Claire was a guy of strong principle, a very thoughtful, principled man. But he didn't like confrontation. Most reasonable people would just as soon avoid it. But he, in that job, and also as a regent, as the chairman of the Board of Regents, he was thrust into controversy and didn't shrink from it. He didn't enjoy it, but stood his ground and stood for what he stood for.
I think Claire Burgener deserves a lot of credit for carrying the state for Reagan-Bush ticket, mainly for Ronald Reagan back in 1984. He worked hard. He was well organized. He brought people together. I'm convinced that even though I think he was out of office in '88 as chairman, his loyal support meant a lot to me when I carried the state as presidential candidate in 1988.
And he also gave me some of the best political advice that anyone has ever given to someone thinking of becoming a candidate. I owe Claire a great deal. I owe my career to him, quite arguably, because it was Claire who called me when he had decided that he was going to run for the state senate. And he called and he said, I think you should run for my assembly seat. And he said, I'd like you to come by and let's talk about it. I did. He said, you should run if you're ever thinking of it. It's an open seat. And he said, it's an open seat in a district that's perfect for you. He said, let me just tell you that I haven't been in Sacramento very long, but long enough to observe a basic truth. He said people go up there and either they can represent a district easily in good conscience because they fit the district, or if they don't, then one of two things happens to them. They either go up and are one-termers because when they vote their conscience, they're not voting their district. But much worse than that are the people who go up there and then trim their sails to be political survivors. And he said, you know something? Life's too short for that. It's a wonderful thing to be able to go up and serve your constituency and do so with integrity. And if you can't, the hell with it. It's just not worth it. Best advice anyone could possibly give or get. The man was just full of integrity.